Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. How is everyone doing? Just getting ready to do another review of a Tom Rabbit video. This one was from, I think last week. Maybe the beginning of this week. It's been a weird week. Oh, let's see. I think this was posted just last Saturday. This is Darth Dawkins having a conversation with a guy named Cole Strausberg, who puts on an interesting affectation to his voice, which is how this whole thing begins, and then they get into their conversation. So I don't think there's really much to preface with this one. I'm just going to, I have listened to this one most of the way through. I don't think I heard all of it, though. So some of this is going to be kind of a first impression, especially towards the end. So I'm not exactly sure what's with it. I got my kind of first impressions watching the first half of it, finished up the rest of it. And yeah, well, we'll see how this one goes. I did not cover the one that was posted before this one, and that was the one where Darth. It's about a 12-minute video. He's talking with somebody, and Darth admits that he believes that there were some dinosaurs on the Ark. I didn't comment on it because it doesn't really need commentary. It's just kind of goofy on its own. Somebody who is better at paleontology or geology or any of that kind of stuff would probably have a very easy time sort of just going through and tearing apart all the things that I'm sure Darth is getting wrong and misrepresenting. He's giving a lot of these breezy, kind of speculative, hand-waving explanations as to how young Earth creationism would work. It would work just fine. And of course, old Earth creationists, old Earthers, which is weird. Old Earthers would really only apply to other Christians, right? Anybody who's in the sciences just sort of deals with the fact that the Earth is the age that it is. But yeah, he's convinced they're all stuck in their dogma. So check that one out if you want to laugh. But it's just sort of ridiculous on its face. I'm not an expert in paleontology or dinosaurs. I can just I just watched it and rolled my eyes, and it is what it is. This one, they get into a little bit of into something a little bit theological, I think, and so we'll take a look at it, see what happens. So anyway, for all of you who have shown up live, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. I'm going to get the video started as usual. If you have any problems hearing anything, give a shout in the chat. Let me know. I'll pause it and then adjust from there. Let's see. All right, and we will get going.
Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
Which voice is more convincing? Is it this one
or this one?
The second one.
So this voice. So there's no to this voice?
No, that one, don't use that one.
Oh, so use this one, you mean?
Yeah, because, yeah.
All right. Kind of hard on the throat.
He's going to do what he did yesterday, though. He's just going to mock you for being a teenager and he'll mute you.
Such a little bitch. Note that the man is scared and he's running from me. Because, did you notice that he didn't actually have me server muted? That's because I actually challenged him in something outside of this channel. So he could only turn me down because he was scared like a little bitch.
Yo, Darth, are you here?
Nah, if he was
Hello?
here, he would have piped up the geriatric. Yeah, I'm here.
Pretty sure this guy keeps this voice up through the entire thing, which I got to give him props for it. It's not easy doing that voice, maintaining it for as long as he does. So props to him.
Here.
There's a guy who wants to debate you called Cole above you. It keeps talking. I don't know if you can hear him.
I was listening, but I wasn't paying attention because I was on my phone. Yeah, go ahead. What's up?
You mean to me or him?
Cole.
Either one.
Oh, well, it was Cole who was asking to debate you.
All right, go ahead, Cole.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you seem to think that the only possible God...
Why are you using a voice changer?
This is not a voice changer. This is my voice.
He's not lying, right? He's not being entirely honest. That is actually his voice, but doesn't require a voice changer to do that.
You need to go to the doctor.
I have a throat problem.
Yeah,
Is that
sounds like throat cancer.
possible?
I love this. Dr. Gary in the house, everybody. Like, he can diagnose throat cancer from someone pulling a voice.
You sound like the homosexual playwright Harvey Firestein.
I like how he couldn't just get the name out. It's easier to say someone's name if you don't load it up with a bunch of adjectives, like, you know, the necessary ones for Darth, like homosexual playwright Harvey Firestein. You know, he could have just said Harvey Firestein. You know, I wouldn't have prefaced it by, you know, everyone's favorite co-star of Mrs. Doubtfire, Harvey Firestein. I mean, it could have, but I wouldn't have to.
Well, I am Jewish, so that fits.
Holy shit, Darth, I think you nailed it. I was trying to figure out who it sounded like in entertainment.
Well, now that we've poisoned the well and completely destroyed my credibility.
No.
No.
I don't recall anyone ever talking like Harvey Firestein. That's why Cole sounds like him. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead, Cole.
No, that's totally fine. I can take a little banter. So, I was here yesterday, and you seem to be making the argument. Well, let me preface this by saying I actually accept the basic transcendental argument and the precept argument. However, I don't agree when you go the next step to say that the only possible God who could explain for the great making properties is the Christian God. I don't believe that that's a deductive logical case.
Well, the transcendental argument for God, especially Christian theism, is not entirely deductive. It's a mixture of deductive and inductive. So,
oh, is it? He's not going to explain how that's the case. He just says that. So I love it when he does this, because normally he's usually crapping on inductive reasoning, right? Like, it's just not enough. And then deductive reasoning, he can't help but screw up, right? Like, the only inference rule that he's a slave to is the law of identity. If that really is considered an inference rule, I think it is. But like any other inference rule, like modus ponens, like when he does something like affirming the consequent, which I covered, you know, in depth over several videos, that he could kind of shake loose, like, whatever. But I guess in this case, it always just sounds like, you know, well, if it's deductive plus inductive, that's extra, right? It's deductive, but with an inductive gravy slathered over the top of it. So, good luck defeating that skeptic.
unless you have a God that has the property set that the God of the Bible has, you're not going to be able to ground intelligibility. So, since you don't accept the God of Christian theism, what is your God who's a defeater for that?
This is where things get really kind of grotesque for Darth, because Darth, when he does this kind of stuff, so this is the kind of guy where it's like, okay, well, if you don't take mine, what's yours, right? This is essentially what he does to atheists all the time, right? Because when he turns around and asks the question, like, okay, well, what is it that you don't believe in the Christian God? What is your foundation for all things that are intelligible? What's your metaphysical foundation for everything that is possible and impossible? He's just restating the God question again. Do you believe in God? Because he's already defined that as God. So he's just smuggling the God question back in and trying to dupe you. It works because he doesn't sound like he's as stupid as the question he's asking.
Why do I need to have a defeater? Why can't I just question the logical necessity that the
Bingo. That's a good question.
Christian God must be the only God?
No, because this is a clash of worldviews. Okay, so if you're not going to accept it, it's a de facto denial.
No, it's not necessarily de facto denial. That doesn't make it. If one hasn't accepted it, it doesn't mean that one is denied it. One is challenging it. One is wrestling with it. One might be on the cusp of accepting it, but has some conditions. They have some notes, as it were. This all or nothing kind of stuff is a thing that you usually see with young children, and it's something that Darth hasn't outgrown. He's kind of a slave to binary thinking, all or nothing.
So if you don't put up, then you don't have a denial.
No,
but he's not Okay, now that's interesting, right? Darth is the one that characterized it as a denial, and then said if you can't put up an alternative, then you don't have a denial. Well, uh, he doesn't actually have to deny it.
No. So I'm gonna do this in the vein of the basic premise that you actually like bring atheists to when they say, well, I'm not convinced of God, and you say, could the not God world exist or the God world exist? And I agree with you there that the not God world simply cannot exist. However, so that is a true dichotomy. However, over here,
Okay, so
all I need
which God are you putting on the table to defeat the Christian God?
yeah. So at that point, I don't think we have.
You don't have to, right? You could it could be an absence of any God, right? Not now this guy's case, he's basically saying he kind of agrees with that. Like he believes in or at least he kind of agrees with the transcendental argument, right? But the problem that he has with that is the way that Darth is using it is he's saying it only works with the Christian God. Those properties only work with the Christian deity as Darth defines them. And this guy's like, I don't think that's actually the case. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with what he's saying there, because a lot of the stuff that Darth is cribbing in order to make his argument for the Christian God are arguments for the God of classical theism or some kind of minimal facts God or whatever, or a minimal definition, which is something he tells skeptics all the time. So what this guy's doing, Darth should be a little bit more flexible on this, but he's not doing it. He should be able to acknowledge the fact that he's told skeptics that I'm not talking about the God of the Bible yet. We're just talking about whether or not you have a metaphysical foundation for that which is possible and impossible. Well, afterwards we can talk about Jesus, right? But like this guy has basically started out with, like, he doesn't follow the logic that Darth's making, where it can only be the Christian God. Darth's bit on this thing without a shred of irony. He doesn't see. He's walking right into it. It's complete lack of self-awareness here as to what his previous stances have been. Like this really does make him look like a hypocrite here.
A true dichotomy, because it is possible to live in the not Christian God world.
No, there is a dichotomy. It's either the Christian God or not the Christian God.
Yes, that is a true dichotomy.
So what are you?
Right, it's either the Christian God or it's not the Christian God. That does not entail it's either the Christian God or it's an other God. The variation that just entails it's either the Christian God. It could be an absence of any God. It could be an alternative God, but it doesn't have to be an alternative. This is strange. Darth seems to be trying to shoehorn this in. Well, it's either God or it's an alternative to him. That's not a dichotomy. A dichotomy is that God exists or it does not exist. That is closer to an actual dichotomy. And even then, I wrestle with that because of the definitions of the God that are throwing in there, just trying to say something like that is extant when it exists always and everywhere is. Anyway, that's just going to make me nauseated and throw up. But anyway, this is now he's actually violating his whole dichotomy thing. The alternative, if it's Jesus Christ or something else, there's lots of alternative gods you could pick from, right? What he's trying to say is that no, it's Jesus Christ as defined as all my omnis, the source of impossibility, and all this kind of stuff. This is like J. Robin does this too. If I lard up the premise with all this kind of stuff, it's either that God or something else, and nothing that you can stack up against it is gonna matter. No, in a dichotomy, it's all that crap larded up on Jesus Christ, or the absence of that. That would be closer to a dichotomy.
You putting in as not the Christian God.
So my statement is that the not Christian God world is possible from our current epistemological viewpoint.
Okay, here's the problem. When you say it's possible, well, you're making a category error here. Okay, possibility is what derives from the ultimate.
According to whom? Possibility derives from the ultimate. What the fuck does that mean? I would like him to really share where he's getting that from, because that sounds like some theology turned into something that sounds vaguely like philosophical gobbledygook. But Darth thinks that he can kind of smuggle in and convince people that he's learned. All he's doing there is saying that only with God are things possible. That's it. Without God, nothing's possible. Trying to say, well, you need an ultimate as the foundation for possibility. That's a theological claim that he's making. He's never been able to demonstrate with any kind of really with any arguments that I've heard that have been convincing that this is anything other than a repackaged theological assertion, and not a great one.
Okay, so you can't talk about everything being possible because that's not coherent. What you have to say is the things that are possible derive from what is necessary. So you're making a
No, that doesn't sound right either. Because couldn't certain possibilities occur from things that could have happened, and one way or the other? But this doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, ultimately, you might try to chase this back to something, but I wonder how Darth avoids this issue of like. I got to read more on this because it seems to me like he's always kind of like dancing around like modal collapse, which is essentially kind of like some philosophers I think argue that that's kind of a logical conclusion to certain necessitarian viewpoints, and it seems like Darth Dawkins kind of holds that, but he's so inconsistent with some of these terms, and well, I don't even know if he's inconsistent. He's consistently sloppy about what these terms mean. They're generally just like kind of vague theological deepities and goofy words that he puts into phrases to make them sound like he's read them out of a philosophy book that no one else has ever seen before, but it's just paraphrased theology.
category error. So if you're going to reject, well, do you understand that the Christian God is defined as the necessary precondition? If you don't accept that, that's a.
I don't think a lot of Christians accept that. Like if you explained what that means, if God is being defined as the necessary precondition for what? Absolutely everything? Okay. Well, now you're going to have to explain to that young Christian family that watched their child suffer and die with some childhood illness, that the whole state of affairs was written by God, the God that they love and worship. So, but the stuff, I mean, details matter in this kind of stuff, and entailment matters. And I really don't think that this guy, like nothing that this guy is talking about, I really wish he actually had a pulpit where he could go and give this kind of stuff to a church. Probably watch people converted to atheists at a record-setting pace. I mean, I don't try to convert people to atheism because I'm not interested. Like how people are convinced of certain things if they're watching these kinds of exchanges, and it gives them a dopamine kick, and they're going to run out and look at one side and the other and kind of weigh in on their own, whatever conclusion they reach. Hopefully, they're using their brain and they're exercising their imagination. Good for them. But somebody like Darth Dawkins, if anybody was interested in recruiting someone to create atheists, this is your guy.
Functional denial. Do you understand that?
If you're stating the premise in that manner, yes, I understand it's a denial.
Okay,
but I don't believe.
Well, then is it an arbitrary? Is it an arbitrary denial?
No, I'm saying your claim that the Christian God is the only possible foundation for an intelligible worldview is arbitrary. I'm saying you're making an arbitrary error.
Oh well, when I say it's arbitrary, I'm simply appealing to God's self-disclosure of Himself. So it wouldn't be arbitrary. The fact that you don't accept the testimony that God has revealed Himself and His characteristics, it doesn't follow from that it's arbitrary. In order for you to demonstrate.
So I actually think both of them are wrong here. I don't think that Darth's claim about this Christian God is arbitrary, because arbitrary would imply some kind of like, it's kind of haphazard. Well, and it's not like Darth can't be haphazard, but it's sort of random or without reason or without some kind of principle. I think Darth believes in this kind of stuff because of what he's read out of the Bible or because of his foundation, his upbringing, good old American traditional Christian values in certain cases, Sunday school. All this stuff has been probably ground into him since he was a kid, on top of all the hours that he spent listening to theologians and apologists and reading some of their crap and, just cementing this more and more into his head. So there's a reason for him to do this. I don't think it's arbitrary, I don't think his reasons are particularly convincing if you follow them back all the way. But now he's going to go into this whole thing and say, well, just because you're not convinced by them doesn't mean that they're arbitrary. That's true. I don't think that's not exactly what Cole was saying there. So now they're beginning to talk past each other. And now Darth is going to prattle on, I think, for a little bit about what arbitrary means. And I think he gets it wrong.
Demonstrate that it's purely arbitrary is that you would have to demonstrate a not Christian God worldview defeater. Do you have one?
I rejected that as necessary. I think all you need to do.
It is necessary, or else you can't claim it's arbitrary. Merely not accepting my line of reasoning doesn't quantify or that it's arbitrary. Otherwise, I can just simply say, I don't accept what you say, therefore what you say is arbitrary.
Okay, now actually to sort of play devil's advocate for Cole here, if Darth is simply just, if Cole's claim is like, well, at this point, I think that given the argument that you're making, you're just, without any kind of demonstration or without any an argument explaining your reasons why, you just seem to be defining this God, the Christian God, as the one with the properties that makes this necessary and excludes the possibility of any other deity. If I might be steelmanning Cole's position there. If I am, I think in that case, I think he's got a claim there. I think that Darth, in attempting to do that with this kind of cockeyed apologetic that he's usually running, is arbitrary until he gives his reasons why. Now, the weird thing about this is that a lot of his better reasons are ones he's going to have to draw from the Bible. But then he's going to end up having to deal with the fact that, someone's going to ask him, well, what are your reasons for thinking that is true? He's not going to get into some kind of debate about whether or not the Bible could be fallible or it's written by men or any of that other kind of stuff. He's just going to appeal to Revelation again, right? Oh, it was revealed to us. And he doesn't demonstrate that, and he doesn't reveal that. Now, in that particular case, that almost is arbitrary. But he is appealing to, he's reasoning from, I think, the arbitrary claims of other theologians and scholars. So he's at least out of that. He might be in the clear there.
Not accepting what somebody says doesn't quantify that it's arbitrary. Okay? Arbitrariness is that you're declaring a proposition without any reason at all. You just pull it out of thin air. Now,
okay,
right. And if somebody's trying to make a claim about God with properties that don't come from the Bible, someone could be pulling those out of thin air. Now, if Darth is saying that he's getting the idea for these properties from some theologian or another philosopher or something like that, great. Then he should just cite that those are his reasons for saying that. But part of the problem that he has here is that he's kind of on thin ice with some of this stuff, because a lot of the stuff that he wants to argue in terms of like transcendental argument for God or some kind of any of that kind of stuff. This happens with people who try to use like some kind of cosmological argument. If you're convinced by that argument, it could get you to the conclusion that there's some kind of deity in maybe a deistic sense or even a pantheistic sense. But to get to that, to jump that and get into a theistic definition where you're talking about a divine being that has personal relationships with people, those properties and that personal relationship part start to, that making that connection. I haven't seen that done yet. So we'll see how far Cole gets with Darth on this one. And yeah, J. Robin made an appearance on Skeptic Generation. Yeah, I was actually watching that earlier tonight. Had to stop. He said, "You mean J. Robin made an idiot of himself in Skeptic Generation again?" Kind of. He was calmer than he's been usually, but he was just as kind of condescending and patronizing. I don't think he was giving them anything new. I wasn't sure. They were being very patient with him, I thought. Kind of. They do seem bored. I haven't finished watching it. They seem pretty bored talking to him. He's J. Robin.
Listen to me. When you do not accept the Christian God, right, you're basically claiming, whether you realize it or not, is that the Christian God is not necessary, right?
I agree with that. Yes, I'm claiming the Christian God from
now, in order to do so,
them's fighting words, Cole.
To say that the Christian God is not necessary, that is the same as saying the Christian God doesn't exist.
Nope. I don't understand how that's entailed. This does not make any sense to me. He's going to dig into this more.
How so? I disagree with that.
Okay, let me explain to you why. Okay,
Go ahead.
Suppose we had an atheist who said,
Before he gets into that, AJ, when you define God hypothetically, if God exists, all of the entailments are also hypothetical until you actually establish the existence of a thing that fits the definition of God. Darth tries to establish that a hypothetical God has real-world entailments. That's a reification fallacy. Yeah, I think you're on a pretty good track there, AJ. I don't know if it meets a reification fallacy. It probably does. But yeah, if anybody has anything to clarify that, go for it. Let's see, Jackburn. Atheists can't exist in Darth's worldview, so he needs to construct his rhetoric to discredit atheism. Just precept 101, shut the mouths of the unbelievers. Yeah, kind of. But yeah, this part's going to get interesting. I'm gonna take this back a couple of seconds. He's going to start with a little explanation here.
why, okay?
Go ahead.
Suppose we had an atheist who said, well, we don't need God. Well, if you don't need God, then it follows from that God doesn't exist, because God...
No, it doesn't. That could be an anti-theist, right? That could be somebody that hates God but believes it's real and says we don't need him.
God is defined as being the necessary precondition. So if you don't need him, then
look, God isn't defined as a necessary precondition. He's just taken to be the creator of all things, right? So the assumption being made by believers is that if he didn't make it, nothing would have happened. The odd thing about that, though, is that may not actually be something that a lot of people hold to, right? It depends on what you think God did. If God created ex nihilo, yeah. The reason that there's something rather than nothing is because of God, and everything is absolutely dependent upon God deciding to poof everything else into existence outside of himself. But if God wrestled some form of matter or chaos or something like that and transformed it into the reality that we have now, no, he's not entirely necessary. He's necessary for the shape it takes, but he's not necessary. It doesn't follow that he's necessary for everything else. And with a deistic God, you could kind of do the same thing. The one that kind of makes the world or shapes the world in a particular way and then just sort of flips away and ceases to be an issue. Yeah, not necessary. Doesn't mean that person doesn't believe in God. Darth's wrong there. Like, but somebody says, oh, we don't need God. No, there's an atheist right there. Nope. No. That person could just be an anti-theist. They could be devout. They could believe, to the soles of their feet, from balls to bones. They believe that there's definitely a higher power, and they hate its guts. And they're of the firm belief, like Schwarzenegger's character from Predator. If it bleeds, we can kill it.
he doesn't exist. It doesn't matter that they don't explicitly say that God doesn't exist. All you have to do is invoke a proposition that necessarily entails the non-existence of God. Do you understand?
Can I address it? So
do you understand what I just said?
I understand, but I'm not seeing the logical. Because I think we have two disanalogous arguments here. So when you go to the actual God argument, well, there I agree with your line of reasoning when you bring it down to, is the not God world possible? Well, the not God world, I agree, is not possible. Therefore,
you're not getting this. You're not getting this. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter at this juncture whether we're talking about the God world versus the not God world, because we have a similar situation. We have the Christian worldview versus not the Christian worldview. In either case, we have a dichotomy. I'm only reverting to the God, not God world in order to simplify this for you. So if somebody says that, first of all, God is defined as being necessary, that's definitionally true. Okay. Now we're not defining necessary. We're not defining God into existence. But if somebody says that God's not necessary, then God, from that position, they're committed that God doesn't exist. Because
it depends on what they mean. Now, possibly from Darth's little goofy worldview, that could be the case, right? If they're even sharing that, like the case that like somebody would just say God's not necessary. In other words, I don't need God's help, or I don't want God's help. I don't need his care. I don't need his love. I don't need his sympathy. I don't need his salvation, whatever. Just kind of fucking around here, though. This idea, like, if somebody says God's not necessary in the case, like God's not necessary for absolutely everything, right? Then you're basically saying that God doesn't exist. I don't know that that's even true either, right? Because again, that person could still believe in a God. They just don't believe that God's responsible for the creation of absolutely everything. It depends on their belief set. And it depends on, quote unquote, their worldview. Unfortunately, Darth is dishonest about whether or not he thinks other worldviews are possible. Mostly because he can't keep presupposition straight. Presuppositional apologetics. Hello, Jay. How's it going?
No, it's going. Yeah, the other thing that one thing I was going to point out was the denial thing, because I think sometimes with Darth he uses denial meaning there's a colloquial usage of denial, like if you just say denial meaning that you don't believe it's true. But there's another usage of denial where somebody says, well, you're in denial of something. It's when someone knows something is true, but they're saying it's not true anyway.
In a psychological sense, sort of a psychological condition. Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that I'm amazed that Darth isn't getting this, because the guy Cole is agreeing with him that the dichotomy would be a God or not God, right? So that's easy enough. But the God part is the part that he's really assessing, is whether or not it has to be a Christian God. And I don't think that Darth is doing a really good job of defending or really understanding that fundamentally before getting into his Christian God thing.
Right, and at this point, he should be actually laying out why it's not, because this guy kind of accused him of making an arbitrary claim. But Darth's defense against arbitrariness seems to be that the denial of his God means that nothing is possible. Like, this God is necessary by definition, and everything else, and everything else is contingent upon him, so you can't deny him. Right? To me, this just seems like, kind of J. Robin at his worst kind of stuff. Any of Darth's droogs have kind of internalize this, enough so that when they get good and worked up, that's the first thing that comes out. And it's like, okay, look, based on the way that you're defining this particular God, like someone could come along and define the exact same God, just not make it Jesus. Muslims do it all the time. You have Muslim apologists that use a presuppositional argument when they're arguing for Allah. So, this idea that Darth is like, well, no, these properties can only exist in Jesus. In that sense, I think that's maybe the connection Cole's trying to make. In that sense, they're arbitrary.
Yeah,
that connection that he's trying to make seems arbitrary, because it's like, what is it about Jesus, the Christian God, that makes all those properties? His identity is what makes all that collection of properties possible.
Yeah, because the other thing is when he's talked about, I'd have to go back. You don't have to take it back where he said somebody invokes the proposition. I'm like, you do realize that a proposition can be invoked arbitrarily. Like, making a proposition that something is true doesn't make it true. It sounded like he was insinuating that a little bit.
Maybe.
Was that just maybe that was just me kind of reading into it, but either way, doesn't matter.
All right, let's go.
Because if God does exist, then God would be necessary. If he's not necessary, then he doesn't exist.
I understand that.
Good.
Well,
The same will hold
what?
true for the Christian God. If you say
Well, for everything, right? Like, if you're following along, it's like, well, if he's not necessary for absolutely everything, then he might as well not exist. I don't exactly, based on the way he's defining them. Sure, if you're just engaging in his hypothetical, but usually Darth loves to craft these things as some kind of dichotomy. But there isn't necessarily anything there. You could have a God that not all things are dependent upon, and that God would still be God.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know why it would be the case. The only reason why that would be a problem for Darth is that you then couldn't say that he's ultimate, according to my hypothetical and my crazy ass examples. Like, okay, who gives a fuck, right? Like, you can't fully comprehend God in the first place, so knock it off. Like, he's playing these weird word games. Like, it has to fit his rhetoric, otherwise it ceases to be God. Like, you can't possibly fucking know that, because you can't understand God in full completion anyway. So, or to completion, dirty.
Sorry, children.
Gross. All right, here we go.
Christian God is not necessary, then what follows from that, he doesn't exist.
I disagree because the Christian God is
Okay,
a qualifier on top.
you're not understanding.
You
All
need
we're
to let
simply
us
doing,
finish.
no, all we're simply doing is changing the values of the dichotomy. If A or we have A or not A. If A is categorized.
Now I love this, right? Because this is where Darth does his like language. Like this is the part where he thinks logic works like blood magic, right? Like he doesn't give a fuck about abusing the shit out of Modus Ponens to the point where he pulls a textbook affirming the consequent fallacy, right? And somebody shows that off to him, and he thinks that he can blabbermouth his way through it and just shucking, just tap dance out of it. And like, oh no, if I just lard up my premises, it doesn't matter if I invalidate that. But here's an inference rule that Darth seems to hold to hard and fast, right? Good old law of identity. A or not A. Watch what he does here.
Well, hold on. But
Categorized and
what dichotomy is basically something or nothing, right? It is either is or it is not, correct?
It's either the thing or the absence of that thing. Yeah.
So what do values have to do with anything other than one or nothing?
No, you're just inserting. You're putting the value in for A, right?
Yeah, but he
Right.
said it depends on the values. It sounded like he was saying that the values were flexible in a way by his language there.
No, I'm pretty sure they are for him, right? Because he's played fast and loose with that before, where he's been like it's
Okay.
either God or not God, or it's God and alternative, right? I don't think he understands how the law of identity works.
Yeah.
But here he goes.
defined as being the necessary precondition of the rest of B, C, D, and E, right? And you say A is not necessary, then A doesn't exist.
Okay, let me.
If A is defined and you say A is not necessary, then A doesn't exist.
Okay,
If
let me.
If A is defined as being the necessary precondition of X, Y, and Z, and you say no, A is not necessary, then that is the equivalent of saying A doesn't exist.
No,
Yeah,
it isn't.
no.
That's not like, and in terms of a dichotomy, the dichotomy is either A is the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, or A is not the prerequisite for A, Y, and Z. Not A doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's trying to say that. Yeah,
so it's you basically have to think of it in brackets, right? This is his problem, right? A is the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, or not. A is the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, right? It either is or it is not. But what he's trying to do is say, like, okay, it either is the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, or you say A isn't the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, and therefore it's now you're saying that it doesn't exist at all. That's not the dichotomy. That doesn't follow from what he's talking about.
Yeah, there was something I was going to bring up about it being these things being in virtue of A, right? Anyway, I won't get into it. I'm not going to extend it, but anyway.
It means A doesn't exist as defined, according to AJ. But I don't see how this. I don't see how what he's doing here is just this. It seems like this little subtle thing. Like, well, if you try to say that he's not the prerequisite for X, Y, and Z, then he doesn't exist at all. No. Right? You're just changing the like so that thing either exists or it doesn't exist, right? One way or the other. Oh, it's.
But it can only exist. Yeah, it can only exist if it's that which is necessary for everything else. That's the problem with it. He's saying that it can only exist if it is actually necessary for everything.
Right.
That's the condition by which it can exist, is only if it is necessary for everything. If you say it's not necessary, for everything, then by that standard, it does not exist based on how it's defined. Yeah. So yes, AJ's right.
So, but this is just one of those things where it's like, well, because when Darth started just a little while ago, when he was talking about this, he seemed to try to be putting Cole into this position where he wanted a defeater for the Christian God. He wanted an alternative to God. It was either God or not not God, right? But the not God position was an alternative to the Christian God,
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
not an absence of the God he was talking about, the
Yep.
God as defined. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? So now maybe he's getting his dichotomy correct here, because it wasn't straight before. And maybe he wasn't trying to do that. Maybe he was just being extremely unclear with his language. But yeah, we'll push forward.
Yep.
Okay, so let's give let me lay this out because I
Are we
understand what you're
clear on that?
No, I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm going to point out where I disagree.
Listen, you're not getting this. I can tell you're not
I
getting this.
understand.
I think that's interesting. This guy, Cole tells him like multiple times that he gets it and he understands, and then he wants to follow up with questions. And the fact that he like wants to ask follow-up questions seems to be proof for Darth that he couldn't possibly get it. I guess the only reasonable explanation that Darth will accept is you're right. Jesus is Lord. Like I convert to Christianity. You won me over, right? Like just I don't.
If we say that A is categorized as being the necessary precondition of X, Y, and Z, and you say A is not necessary for X, Y, and Z, then what logically follows from that is A does not exist as defined.
But
you might want to posit that A exists as not defined, but A would not exist as defined. Do you understand?
Understand. I understand.
Good. Okay. Now,
so
if I say A is the necessary precondition of X, Y, and Z, and somebody comes along and saying A as defined is not necessary, that is the same thing as saying A doesn't exist.
Sure. Perfect.
Good. Now, all I've simply done is I've
could
changed
X, Y,
the
and Z
value
exist?
from A.
But could X, Y, and Z still exist without A?
No, not as defined.
But he didn't say that though.
But again, the problem with this is that as he's defining it in terms of like setting up a dichotomy as rhetoric, sure, that works. How do you apply that to a real world, to a real scenario? How do you demonstrate that God is necessary for X, Y, and Z, or if we can determine the lack of necessity for X, Y, and Z on a God's part, then that God isn't there. Where's the connection? Like he'll end up trying to point to probably possibility or contingency or something, or usually just an appeal to the fact that it must have come from that because it couldn't have come from something else, right?
I think so. Yeah, there's problems with it. There's something I'm working on in the background here, but I'll probably have to listen back on this one and try and. There's this something is just striking me wrong about what he's saying there, and I can't remember what it is. I mean, there's normally always something wrong, but
here's the biggest problem that I have with it. So if he's getting this inference rule right at this stage in his little argument, he's basically insisting that because this holds as it within the the law of identity kind of inference that you can make, right? So A as he's defining it, that this is the God as he's defining it, it's either that or it's not, right? So it must be the case somehow, right? He's always pushing this past like what AJ had mentioned earlier. He's trying to push this into the realm of like it exists rhetorically or it exists in this logical structure, then it now follows that it exists in real life. Darth will say this frequently. Darth will say that, well, it's valid and it's sound. He does that all the time. Well, it's a valid and sound argument. Well, that doesn't just because it's valid does not mean he seems to be saying, well, it's valid and it's sound and that equals real.
Yeah, he's conflating validity and veracity.
Yes,
that's what he's doing. He's doing that again. He doesn't understand that validity doesn't necessarily mean veracity.
Yep.
Simply being to God, to the God of Christian theism. It doesn't matter whether you say God or you're more specific in saying the God of Christian theism, because as an entity, either way, they're being defined as the necessary precondition of X, Y, and Z. If you say either one of them are not necessary, that is the equivalent of saying they don't exist.
Okay, but how does he get that God as defined to be the God of the Christian Bible? Because when Cole came in here, Cole didn't necessarily disagree with him on his transcendental or his presuppositional arguments. So how is Darth making the connection to that particular God as being the necessary creator of all things? Because when Cole challenged him on this, essentially, right, Darth wants to basically say, like, well, we know that the Christian God is because it's with the Christian God that all these properties hold, and that's what entails possibility and impossibility and all things being contingent, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, okay. But all he's basically done over the last almost 12 minutes is just reassert what he's been saying.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, in a simple way, Cole is saying you're basically, I don't have a problem with it being any old person, but you're saying this is Tommy, and I'm saying it could be a Billy.
Yeah.
Or it could be a Joe, right? It's not just, so yeah, you can either have it or not have it. Great. But yours gets to a specific person. Let's just say it's a person. You're saying this is a particular person. It's Tommy. I'm saying based on this, it could be a Billy, it could be a Joe, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
And going from there.
Yeah, it could be something else, right? And this is where Darth is sort of losing it. And all he's doing is basically pointing out all the properties that could be, hey, yeah, okay, yeah, great. It's necessary for all these things. Let's I don't know why he's even bothering to demonstrate this as a dichotomy. That doesn't demonstrate that the Christian God's the one. It just demonstrates that there's a creator God that is ultimate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect. Now I understand where we differ. So I will amend my statement to saying the Christian God, as defined as the necessary precondition for the intelligibility and the universe itself, does not exist. I will make that claim. Yes.
Good. What is the ultimate precondition of everything then?
I'm just making a negative claim.
No, you're not understanding. No.
Now this is where Darth usually loses it, right? So Cole's still basically in the same position where they started. He's skeptical that the Christian God is the one that has to be the one that Darth is as defined in Darth's arguments. And Darth now wants an alternative. Name me the other guy.
Yeah, it might.
Or girl.
It might. Well, I think technically he would have to, in a way, because he is saying it's true that it's not this God. It's not the God of Christianity, right? But it would be funny if he just said, I don't know, but I know it's not the one that you're talking about. And Darth would just flip out.
Yeah. It would be great if he just did that. Like, oh, I don't have an alternative for you. I'm not saying that I've got the right one. I'm just saying yours is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
No, you're not understanding. Not accepting something is not a defeater.
It doesn't. Oh my God, why does he fucking do this? He doesn't have to present a defeater if he's not convinced. This is such horse shit. You do not, in order to find someone not guilty, you don't have to catch the actual murderer. If you've got somebody on trial for murder, right? And that person, and that person is found innocent by the jury does not have to find the actual perpetrator, right? This is a weird burden, a weird shift of obligation that he's trying to do here.
Yeah, but the
just because you're not convinced, that's not a defeater. He's not saying it is a defeater. He's not bringing a defeater. There's a difference. Like if he was a Muslim and they're trying to have an argument of Islam versus Christianity, which one has the best argument for a creator God, right? They're trying to present a defeater, right? That kind of makes sense. Or they're trying to defeat an argument or something. That's actually a little cumbersome to say a defeater, because that can be used in terms of like trying to show a contradiction in an argument or something like that. I think it has a technical usage for something in philosophy. Anyway, but if somebody says like here's this creator God, it has all these properties and it's Jesus. You presented a hypothetical and you posit that it has all these properties. And then you connected all those properties in something like that hypothetical, and you demonstrated with the law of identity that it has to be the case, or it's not the case, it's impossible to be one way or the other, and then you connected it to the stories of Jesus. Okay, I don't buy that. It might be the case that there's a creator God with all these properties, but this part where you claim that all that stuff belongs to Jesus, the Christian God, I'm not convinced. Well, you better present a defeater. Why? Cole's not objecting to the definitional aspect of the deity. He's just objecting to its identity. And Darth wants him to give him a defeat. Wait, all Cole would have to do at this point is say it's Allah or it's Vishnu. Right? He just has to tack a name onto it and be like, there you go.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm looking at this from the propositional, from looking at the propositions in and of themselves and people's mental states. In conversations with Darth, this has a tendency to get fuddled up a little bit. But
yeah, you're presumed innocent and found not guilty. You're not found innocent in court. That's I misspoke, Daniel Cooper, but that is kind of what I meant. But at the same time, if a person is found to be not guilty of a particular crime, the onus is that not on anyone in particular. To like, we can only find this person not guilty if we have a better guilty party waiting in the wings that we can pin it on. Right? It's a bad analogy. I grant that.
Well, it's not bad. It's just basic. So they didn't meet their burden when they make the claim. So the state basically claims that they're making the claim that this person is guilty of something. Now they have to prove that the person's guilty, and they have to convince a jury. And the jury, based on what's being presented, isn't convinced, and they say, we come to the conclusion that the person is not guilty. That doesn't mean that the jury has to say, well, we now know who is guilty.
Yeah, you don't have to find. You don't actually have to find the murderer to find the person, or the burglar or whatever to find the person on trial not guilty.
Yeah.
Right?
And again,
based on the circumstance. Yeah. And in this particular case, this is where Darth starts to shoehorn on this idea. Like, he wants a defeater, and it always seems like what he wants is an alternative. Right? Like and this is where usually people end up making this mistake. I don't think Cole does, though. We'll play this more. I don't think he actually goes into this, because some people will be like, oh, well, it's a God that only reveals itself to me, or it's my pantheistic God, or, well, actually, as a Hare Krishna does all these things, and Krishna can actually perform, can act in contradictory ways, so it's more powerful than your God, or whatever. Yeah. I don't think Cole goes for this. So let's play this up.
Yep.
To defeat A, listen to me carefully. If somebody comes along and they affirm Q, right? Somebody just says, well, I don't accept your claim of Q. That's not a defeater for Q.
But they're not, if they're not claiming to have a defeater, if they claim they have a defeater and then refuse to present it, then Darth would have a gripe. But if they say that they don't accept what you're presenting, they don't have to they don't have to provide a defeater. They're just not convinced of what you told them.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you've talked about before. Can you give me your reasons why you think that is not it? Why you believe that God is not it? Based on what Cole said. He said, yeah, because remember, he said, when it comes to the Christian God, yeah, I believe it's false. Right? I hold that that's false. So he's basically saying it's true that the God of the Bible is false. Right?
Daniel, yeah. I've heard Dillahunty phrase it as he finds God not guilty of existing. Yeah. AJ writes, by the way, TMM has a great video of Frank Turk actually claiming that a detective would have to provide another suspect before he could dismiss the initial suspect. Apologists are monsters. Yeah, and that's absolutely not the case. Like, you don't.
you don't have to do that. There's other ways of ruling out suspects.
And that would be a corrupt cop, right? Like if he's thinking like, well, I'm not letting this person off the hook because if I don't have anybody to pin it on, right? Like, that's not how they're supposed to be working. That's a bad cop.
That can lead to a lot of confirmation bias, and where you get that cop that's like dead set on trying to convict this guy because they got no one else. I'm sure it's this person. I'm sure it's this person, and well, I haven't found anyone else that could possibly have done it, and gone from there.
Nicola writes, my God created deity's God and created that God with the false belief that deity's God always exists and it was the being upon which all things depend on for their existence. Yeah, there you go. But where did you read that? Who told you that? That's usually where Darth starts getting into like schoolyard bully mode. Yeah, where'd you hear that from? Was it from your dad?
Nicola, is that an arbitrary claim? Is that an arbitrary claim you're making?
Get out of here! You just pulled that out of your ass. Here we go.
Now, if the person responded and say, well, I don't accept your claim of Q because here is not Q, well, then that would be a defeater. So not accepting a claim is not a defeater.
Yeah, he's completely right about that, but Cole's not doing any of this.
Do you understand that?
I do not believe I have defeated your argument yet, but I believe that now we are actually beginning the argument.
Yeah, dude, you have problems focusing.
So do you, Darth. So do you.
Right? Now,
like, I mean, you ought to focus on whether or not this guy is actually trying to present a defeater or if he's just rejecting your initial claim. I think he was making a good point. That he's like, yeah, we're just starting to get into this argument. Because at this point, like, I mean, this Cole, it sounds like he's basically kind of settled into the terms as Darth's defined them. And now Darth's like, you got to present me with a defeater. It's like, have you really gotten there yet? Like, like he's like kind of jumping to the end.
Listen carefully. Your position is that the Christian God does not exist as the necessary precondition for all facts, including the truth, reason, and the intelligibility and the interpretability of facts. So what then is the precondition that you will need as a defeater and a falsifier that the Christian God is?
I believe a God.
But the facts again, like they're hanging out there in the ether.
Well, not only that, but he's not trying to falsify the God in terms of the properties as defined. He's not convinced that Darth has made the connection between that bundle of properties or that God is defined and its identity as the Christian God.
Yeah.
So when he's trying to say falsified, like what exactly needs to be falsified here? Because
just
Cole
that it's not that God. Just that it's not that God.
That's what Darth is saying. Like there's something somehow that's not the exact same one. But what Cole started this off like, I don't see the logical entailment that all these particular properties of God that you say are God can only be accounted for by the Christian God, right?
Yep.
That's how he started this off. So when Darth now was saying like, hey, you need you say you have a falsifier for this. What he's not falsifying the God as defined in terms of its properties, just the fact that you're making the claim that it has these properties and it is Jesus.
Yeah.
He's not convinced by the Jesus part. So I think this might be a little too nuanced for Darth.
Who the necessary precondition for the entire universe and the intelligibility of the universe therein would be a God having some of the properties of the Christian God, but not all of them.
Oh, okay. So what fundamental properties?
He's going to ask another loaded question, probably. In all seriousness, though, if you ask Dady why you need a defeater for something that to this point is meritless, he'll lose his shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And at this point, like, and keep in mind, Darth is asking this guy for a defeater when this guy has conceded to all of Darth's definitions save one. He's conceded to all the properties of the God. He just doesn't think that, again, his original claim was he doesn't think that it's the Christian God. And that was his challenge to Darth. And Darth is, in almost 14 minutes now, has not really made it there. They are just bummed as they convince Jesus because of his absent dad.
So the Christian God does your God not have?
Well, my God doesn't I don't have an alternative God. I'm merely saying.
Oh, okay. Then we're done, because now what you're doing is you're resorting to pluralism. Okay, you're committing the fallacy of pluralism, and here's what it is. In generic terms, it's called the worldview body double. All right. So just like Hollywood actors, because they don't want to get hurt, they have a body double or a stunt double do the parts. So what you're doing is you're appealing to another model of reality that is not your own to say, well, this one is how shall I put this?
Okay, first of all, this is bullshit, because if he's just going by the definition, the dictionary definition of pluralism, which is where you have two or more states or groups, some kind of two sources of authority, right, coexist. That's not what Cole's talking about. He's not talking about the Christian God and then another God with the same properties. At least that's not what I gathered. His contention is he doesn't see how the God that Darth is defining is in fact Jesus as
Yeah.
identified.
The Christian God. Yep.
Now, I don't know. Darth is like, oh, well, what you're talking about is pluralism. If Cole was trying to say that there's a Christian God with these properties and say the Muslim God or a Hindu God over here or any other God over here with the exact same properties, those would be two sources of authority that would more kind of be co-equal. They would coexist together. Then this claim of pluralism by Darth might hold some water. But based on my understanding of the definition of pluralism, that Cole hasn't gotten anywhere near that. Cole thinks this God exists, and he thinks there's just one. He just doesn't think it's Jesus.
Yep.
You're offering another worldview that is not your own, that is a potential actual. Okay?
True.
But unfortunately, that whatever that worldview would contradict your worldview. So you are invoking something that is false from your perspective.
So
What?
Yeah. So that's incoherent.
why is
What
it
was that?
incoherent? I'm merely entertaining.
What?
Actual. Okay?
True.
But unfortunately, that whatever that worldview would contradict that is reality that is not your own, to say, well,
Sure.
this one is a, how shall I put this? You're offering another worldview that is not your own, that is a potential actual.
So you can't argue a hypothetical? Is this what he's talking about?
Okay?
I think so. I don't
But
quite get it.
unfortunately, that whatever that worldview would contradict your worldview. So you are invoking something that is false from your perspective.
No, the worldviews are the same. Hold on. The
What?
worldview is the worldview is the same. The worldview is a God is a worldview in which a God is necessary for all things. The only difference is in the worldview, one person holds to the same thing. A God is necessary, but in Darth's, it has to be the Christian God, whereas Cole is saying, no, it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. I like this, I love how Didi has been talking to an actual troll for 15 minutes, and yet he prides himself on recognizing trolls. LOL. And here's the thing: when that guy was playing around with his voice, as far as I know, Darth was listening in the entire time. He was just on his phone. He wasn't paying attention. At the very beginning of this, that guy is like trying to find a voice that he's going to use when he talks to Darth, and then another guy with an accent from the UK, I think, kind of is like, "Hey, Darth, are you there?" And Darth pipes, what? Yeah, I'm here. I was listening, but I wasn't paying attention. I was on my phone. So
Then he
I don't
wasn't.
know.
Then he wasn't listening.
If this was on Discord, I'm sure it probably was on Discord. Maybe he had himself deafened. I don't know. But if he was listening the entire time, if he was on there, this guy was basically setting himself up. And then he gets in and he's like, "What's wrong with your voice? You sound like you have throat cancer." Like, the guy was literally talking to one of his friends. As far as I know, they're in the same group. There's no cut on Tom's part. They're in the same room. He's basically like, "Should I do this one?" The guy's like, "No, not that one. How about this one?" "Yeah, that one. Do that one." Brilliant, Darth. Ding. Spotting trolls from a mile away.
So
Yeah. So that's incoherent.
why is it incoherent? I'm merely entertaining.
Because it's false with respect to your worldview.
I'm not. It's not actually false.
Yes, it is. Listen.
How? How does a guy concede to Darth's, like, the properties of the God that Darth is laying out there? How does he concede to them, and now he's arguing something that he believes to be false? He hasn't said that God is false. He doesn't think it's the Christian God. So Darth's going to be like, well, if you don't think it's the Christian God, then you're basically saying that none of this stuff is possible. Like, at what point does that make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't.
God damn, what a dumbass.
Listen, look, dude, you are uneducated.
It has to be the lion. It can't be that tiger.
Simus and his avatar is a troll as well. Yeah, I don't understand that they I mean, it's the weird Poindexter looking guy, but I don't, if that's a reference to something, I don't recognize it. So
has a worldview. You have one, I have one. All worldviews are composite, right? They are your collection, your interconnected, interrelated beliefs that are unified, usually concretely, sometimes abstractly. Now,
I agree.
every worldview is mutually exclusive to another worldview. Okay, so for example, I could have a
What was that?
worldview and I could have another
Yeah.
abstracted
Yeah.
are composite.
So this gets really fucked up here, and I when I was listening to this, when I listened to this portion of it, I heard it last yesterday, I think, or on maybe it was on. It didn't make any sense to me because he says something I think coming up, and then almost immediately contradicts it. But yeah, if you can track this better than I could, Jay, more power to you. Let's go through this.
Right? They are your collection, your interconnected, interrelated beliefs that are unified, usually concretely, sometimes abstractly. Now,
I agree.
That's interesting because he told Smokey Saint that the only worldview is the Christian worldview, and that worldview is God. So let's go back a few more, and we'll start this over again. This, folks, is Darth Dawkins laying out what he thinks a worldview is, for the purposes of this conversation, anyway.
And trying to define how they're mutually exclusive. That's the thing that caught me.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, Dede said exactly the opposite about worldviews. That doesn't surprise me. I'll actually give an example of one that I heard yesterday. Actually, I should do it now while I'm thinking about it. Remember when he asked people about, like, what is it for you that's fundamental, right? What is absolute and fundamental to your worldview? Do you have something that? And the person answers, I don't know. And he says, and he responds and gets immediately triggered. I didn't ask you what you know. I asked you what you believe. He's done it multiple times now. He's been doing it to a lot of people when he gets them into his interrogation. He was talking to a teenager yesterday in a clubhouse room, and he asked that kid. He was giving this kid this long-winded explanation that the difference between not knowing something and not believing it is a distinction without a difference. That saying that you don't know it and saying that you don't believe it, it's basically the same thing. He just said this last night. He was in Punishing Atheism's room, and he said that horse shit. So if anybody hears him do that crap where I didn't ask you what you know, I asked you what you believe, tell Darth that's a distinction without a difference, and tell him he can shove it up his ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's a fucking hypocrite, and this guy lies so much that he can't pay attention to all the lies he's telling at this point. He can't track this. This is mostly performative horse shit at this point. And he's going to do it again here.
Well, Jeff, his one conversation with one person and his conversation with another person on the same topic are necessarily mutually exclusive. Because
they're mutually exclusive. Yeah, and I'm going to deal with you guys in mutually exclusive ways. The lies I tell this guy aren't going to match the lies I tell that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because their beliefs are mutually exclusive from one another.
Right. And it doesn't matter if I'm lying to them. Their worldviews are irrelevant because they're not Christian. So I can tell you all different lies as often as I want. I'm lying for Jesus. Wang. Just... Christians like this, you just go back to Roman Catholicism, Darth, and shut the fuck up, right? Just, take the confirmation, get back into the church, and stop doing this, or convert to Islam.
No, not that.
I have.
So anyway, he's going to lay this out, kind of, right? This is probably going to differ from what a lot of people have heard. So everybody, hold on to your butts. And Jay, I'm going to play this for a few minutes. Pay extra close attention. I'm going to play this. I think that he lays this out. Cole asks him a question, and then Darth comes back with the exact opposite within like a minute. I might be wrong because I didn't get a chance to rewind this before, but check this out. So,
yeah, because I'm still sitting here with bated breath as to how he demonstrates how worldviews are mutually exclusive. I'm still waiting for that explanation.
Yeah.
One. All worldviews are composite, right? They are your collection, your interconnected, interrelated beliefs that are unified, usually concretely, sometimes abstractly. Now, every worldview is mutually exclusive to another worldview. Okay, so for example,
so they're mutually exclusive.
Just let him go. Just let him go.
I could have a worldview, and I could have another person who shares my worldview, but we could have a dispute over as to what certain beliefs are within that worldview, but we would both have the basic same worldview, even though some of the sub-beliefs may be in conflict with each other.
And they're not mutually
So
exclusive.
we have essentially this.
Yeah, he's changing the definition as he goes. The
Yeah.
just listen to this, because the definition is already starting to change. It's already starting to
Yeah,
slide.
sorry. I should have just stayed muted when I said that out loud. Go ahead.
Same worldview. Now, all
Sure.
worldviews are mutually exclusive and contradictory to each other. Are we clear on that?
Agreed. Even the person who has roughly the same worldview as yours, but has
No.
even one belief which differs.
No, sir. No, sir.
Has it-
No, sir. That would not be. That
Yes,
would
sir.
not be a no. That would not be a conflict of worldviews, because what that would be a conflict of is certain sub beliefs. Okay. What we're
Listen, this makes no fucking sense at all. Like, okay,
So
what? So it's like,
what
okay,
the fuck is he talking about?
if your worldview is a composite of all of your beliefs, right? Is a composite of all of those beliefs, right? How do you have sub beliefs being separate from your
I think-
worldview? What the?
I think he might be talking. Maybe he's talking about. Maybe he's conflating sub beliefs to be properly basic beliefs, which I think is, if I remember correctly, it's part of part of foundationalism. I don't know. It's been a minute. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
that's the-
yeah, go ahead.
looking at is what is fundamental to a worldview. Okay, so for example, I have a Christian worldview, and I have some other Christians who are Calvinists. I'm not a Calvinist. Okay, so we have the
Right.
same worldview, but we have a different understanding of the nature of depravity and of predestination. But we have the same worldview. Or for example,
So now it sounds like what you have to have that your worldview isn't a composite of all of your different interconnected ideas, concrete or arbitrary or whatever, interdependent, interconnecting. It sounds like you have a core belief, like Christianity. That's a worldview, and then you have a system of sub-beliefs that surround it. But that's not how he defined a worldview in the beginning. So now none of this makes any real sense. This is like listening to a kid come up with a plot for sci-fi or something. Like, this is fucking awful. Like, you're not defining a goddamn world. Not only that, but he's Van Tillian. He believes in Van Tillian presuppositional apologetics. There are no fucking worldviews. There's one.
Let's get somebody get Ozymandias on the phone. Get him in here.
There is only in Van Tillian. I was just talking to a friend about this today. There is only, and he's like, "Yep, I've listened to hours." This guy's listened to nearly 100 hours of Van Til's lectures and lectures from Bonson. Even though Bonson takes a different tack, so this friend can kind of point out the difference. He's like, Van Til did not believe. That's not the point of using that presuppositional apologetic. There aren't more worldviews. There's one worldview. Darth gets this wrong all the goddamn time. He keeps talking about this like, oh, well, I have a worldview and you have a worldview. No, you fucking don't. Not if you're a presuppositionalist. There's one worldview in the presuppositional apologetic. And if Darth Dawkins believes that's biblical, trying to pretend that people have another worldview outside of that is anti-biblical and a lie. So he's lying to people for Jesus. Or he just doesn't understand what the fuck he's talking about. You can't have another worldview if you hold to Van Tillian presuppositional apologetics. You can't. You're concluding something that's not there. What you're doing instead, what he's doing, is taking Bonson's techniques about talking a Christian out of what they think is their worldview and making them realize that everyone has the shared worldview of the Christian worldview.
Yeah.
But Darth hasn't fucking figured that out because he's an obnoxious nitwit. So he keeps doing this where he's literally tap dancing between Bonson's technique and Van Til's actual idea, even though Van Til's actual idea is horseshit. But he's not consistent with either. He just uses the technique as often as possible when it's Bonson because he thinks it's weaponized and he can really trigger the skeptics with that. The only problem is that he kind of believes it, and it contradicts what he thinks Van Til is. Well, what people know Van Til was trying to say. What Darth thinks Van Til was trying to say is a complete mystery to me at this point. This makes no sense. He's completely out on his own here. So here we go.
How shall I say? Disagreeing on certain sub-beliefs does not mean we have a conflict in worldviews. It just means we have a conflict in a couple of beliefs within the shared worldview.
And how do you non-subjectively?
Listen to me. We can take any two people on this planet who have a shared worldview, and in terms of the total collection of their interconnected or interrelated beliefs, no two people share exactly the same beliefs within a shared worldview. The only
who's defining when the worldview is shared and when it's not? Where's the dividing line for that, Darth Ding Dong? What the fuck are you talking about?
You're starting to sound like praise, Jeff. You might want to calm down the rhetoric.
Yeah, sorry. This makes no sense. He started off with a definition that's like it was like a crappy Jello mold, and then just slowly poured that off the plate into the garbage. And now he's still talking out of his ass about this thing. This makes.
I was just gonna. Because you just don't understand the damn topic. Oh!
I'm getting as mad as a prairie yam over here. Oh,
exists like that. Therefore, what you are saying is, therefore, every single person has a contradictory worldview to every other person on the planet. That's ridiculous.
I mean, that's
it's absurd what you're. No, it's absurd what you're saying.
That's an adjective. That's not something which actually has any logic.
You're not getting this. It's not sinking into you. Okay. One can have a shared. Listen to me. Suppose I'm a Bible believing Christian, and I'm talking to another Bible.
Yes, I'm not getting it, Darth, because our worldviews are mutually exclusive.
Exactly. This is one of the things that I wanted to like kind of remind people of. If you end up and this is where he gets with Randolph, right? Randolph will usually keep him in this kind of thing because what drives Darth crazy is because Darth's constantly trying to prove to Randolph that agnosticism isn't real, which is just a stupid hill to die on, right? But the more he does that with Randolph, the more when you watch Darth have that conversation with Randolph, the more you see all you have to do is just say, well, from my worldview, that doesn't work.
I'm going to retract that dumbass statement. If anyone heard that, I'm going to just say pointless.
What? What's that?
Oh, I called him a dumbass. I kind of under my breath. I don't know if it came through or not. I retract that. I'll just change that to pointless.
This is something that anybody could really just hold Darth's feet to the fire, and people have before, right? Like that's not like if he really holds that people have different worldviews, right? Now at this point we can't figure out how he's defining them, but what I bet you can do, right? Like he believes that like Darth isn't a Calvinist, but there are Calvinists out there. They have the same worldview because they're both Christian, right? Does Darth think a Catholic has the same worldview?
It's a good question.
When now he's basically turning the worldview thing into his own justification to play the no true Scotsman fallacy as often as he wants. Darth defines what is and what isn't a worldview, and he'll let you know if you share his worldview or you have a worldview that is in direct contradiction to his own. Right? And it's not just because you have like one or a handful of quote unquote sub-beliefs that differ. It would be something intrinsic to the worldview, some kind of core thing that he really didn't lay out before. He said it was an interconnected composite of beliefs.
Yeah, sometimes it's referred to as a web.
Right, but he didn't actually mention that it requires a core. And that seems to be what he's appealing to at this point.
Yeah, that's what the last time I had a conversation with him about, well, it wasn't a conversation, it was an interrogation. He said that the worldview is based on the core or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad hill to die on for Darth. His apologetic is utterly useless on agnostics. The whole thing is designed around forcing people to defend an indefensible claim. Yeah, but what's really interesting about that is that he's fixated on the agnosticism because AJ's right. Agnosticism really is tough for him to deal with, right? They'd just be like, no, I'm not convinced. And if he's trying to say, no, what you're doing is denying it. It's an implicit denial. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm just not convinced. I'm not claiming that there isn't a God.
Well,
I'm not claiming that there is one.
You got a hold of that Romans 1. Everybody knows God. All men know God. So you're automatically in denial, meaning you know it's true, but you're saying it's not true anyway.
But it depends on how it depends on
how he's using denial.
And I think that Darth reads that denial from Paul that way. Now, whether or not Paul meant that denial that way, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So,
believe in Christian, and somebody says, "What time is it?" and I say it's 3:00. And my friend who is a Bible believing Christian, and we have all the same beliefs, and he says, "No, it's not 3:00. It's 3:10." Okay. The only difference between our worldviews is I think it's 3:00 and he thinks it's 3:10. Do we have contradiction?
But fundamentally, you both believe in time.
Right.
You both hold to the same belief in the concept of time.
Right. What in the galloping fuck does a 10-minute difference in an apprehension of time have to do with a change in worldviews?
I don't know.
Three worldviews? Do we have contradictory worldviews?
Yeah, so if we're going to be...
No, I don't. So why did you... like this is a great example. Like, I'm going to give this complete horseshit example of why that's not the case, that we have contradictory worldviews. Well, no, you don't, because you both... is he strawmanning himself at this point? Like, I'm having trouble keeping track.
I think he's just using... I think at that point, Darth is just using time as for his example, instead of using denominations of Christianity.
Right, but this would be like two people being given the same checkbook to balance, and they come up with different totals. One of them could be right, one of them could be wrong. They could both be wrong, right?
They could both suck at math. Yeah.
Yeah, they could both suck at math. That doesn't mean their worldviews are different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He even said those are sub-beliefs. Right? So I don't understand this. Like, but here's the thing, though. Without appealing to some kind of like core when he was talking about that, like, he's not going to get anything other than confusion about this, because at what point does a person trigger enough different sub-beliefs to have to quantify as a separate worldview?
Well, all worldviews are separate, but I mean, because they're subjective to the person. But that's why I still.
But when I think when he said all worldviews are mutually exclusive, he just means the Christian worldview versus any other worldview. I don't think he means worldviews. This is the problem with his language. Like, it sounds like when he's starting with his explanation of worldview, he's talking about a person's independent beliefs, but he's sort of like he's talking about two different things in one. There's sort of the worldview from the Christian worldview, which contains a correct ontology that Christians are tapped into. They could have sub-beliefs that don't match up and don't match each other, but fundamentally they're all part of the same worldview. And then there's people who, in this way, we can say that any worldview other than the Christian worldview is mutually exclusive from it. It would be a non-Christian worldview. So, according to Darth, it's by definition incorrect. But when he started talking about what the definition of a worldview was, he just said it was a composite of beliefs, interconnected and otherwise.
I think he made a mistake using that. Mutually
he definitely did, because he left out a bunch of properties that are necessary in order to make any kind of sense out of this. So this is how he wraps up the rest of this conversation with actually he gets frustrated and boots Cole here pretty quick. So
cool.
No, sir. You're not understanding. Listen, only one worldview can be true. You understand that?
Of course. And there is an objective fact of the matter.
And here's the problem. Listen, you're not how old are you?
Seriously?
I'm old enough to have this conversation.
Yeah, this is when you know. Yeah, he's reached his limit. Yeah,
that's when you just go, Darth, you're done. You went to age. You're done.
Yep. The check engine light's on. Yeah, the smoke's pouring out from under the helmet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to find out. I'm 60. How old are you?
I'm about roughly half your age.
Okay. Do you know why I ask? It's because you're talking to me with the mindset of a 15-year-old. This is how teenagers reason. You're not reasoning like a 30-year-old man. I am trying to.
The next time Darth asks somebody what their age is, just old enough to fuck your mother. That is the only appropriate answer to Darth's question about your age. The response should be old enough to fuck your mother. And I want to make sure that I explain this clearly, because I'm afraid people will think that what I mean by that is say this thing about his mom to piss him off. No, what I want everyone to make perfectly clear to Darth Dawkins, if he's talking to them, that person, by him consenting to have a conversation with them, regardless of their age, is now old enough to, in fact, fuck his mother. And we'll continue.
Good enough to fuck your mother.
Walk you through this. Listen carefully.
I can recount all your
Let me explain something to you. You're speaking out of ignorance. I'm trying to educate you. Okay. Now.
Sure, I'm trying to be respectful.
Okay.
And I've been listening.
Thank you, Darth.
Listen to me. My patience is running out with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now.
Well,
if
I don't think I'm beating
okay, listen to me. You have diarrhea of the mouth. I know I talk a lot odd, but at least I have substance behind what I'm saying.
No. I mean, diarrhea has lots of substance sometimes, too. I mean, it's not just all fluid. I mean...
Well, fluid is a substance.
Maybe it's been a while. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
the
been
water
a while
in your
since Darth
toilet bowl is a substance.
Yeah, I used to think that maybe Darth's not capable of filling a diaper. Maybe it's like Splash Mountain down there. Anyway, sorry.
It's like when you fill your mouth up, you fill your mouth up with water, and then you put your hand over it, and then just try to spit it out.
Diarrhea is a substance. Yeah, agreed, Jack. Agreed.
Like you, I want you to listen to me very. Okay, fuck off. I've reached my limit with you. You're a moron. What a moron. Harvey Firestein Jr. What a moron.
Harvey Firestein Jr.
Yeah, get out of here.
That's not even close to Firestein.
What a clown.
Oh, yeah, he's mad.
What's up, Darth?
He's
He's
angry.
an idiot. The guy says he's 30 years old. Wow. I feel sorry for him.
He didn't say he was 30 years old. He said he was roughly half your age. And given that you've been 60 for the past 10 years, that guy could be, yeah. I mean, who knows?
He could be between 35 and 50.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration.
It's just ludicrous that. Oh, so guess what? You're a 30-year-old man. Okay.
Oh my
and
God!
You're now doing trolling tactics by changing.
Yeah, he did not say he was 30. Like this guy. That's how. What's this? What a dipshit! Like he's grappling onto that. Like, well, you admitted that you said you were 30. He said he was.
This is pathetic. This is the same thing he always does when he gets frustrated. He starts attacking the person. It was supposed to be a cordial conversation about a topic or topics. And when the topic's not going his way, and for some reason this person's just not learning the way Darth thinks they should be learning, he starts attacking them personally. There's no point in this other than for his own self-gratification.
Yep.
Changing your name. This is why I asked your age. Guess what? Now you're bad.
Oh.
Maybe you're chronologically 30, but you have the mind of a 15-year-old. I didn't lose. It's just that you are just simply recalcitrant. Okay? You're indefatigable in your stubbornness.
Darth cannot prove Trinity in the Bible. Darth cannot prove Trinity in the Bible because...
Also banned. All right.
Did you get that, Tom Rabbit? Hey, Tom Rabbit!
So, yeah, that's it. All right.
That's a funny one. Thank you, Tom Rabbit. I hadn't seen that one. That's fucking hilarious.
So let's I should tell everybody on here, so I decided, some people pointed out that Darth was hanging around he has an atheist helpline channel on the Veritas Discord server. And I saw it come up, people were talking about it. So I stupidly decided, I'll take a look. And I was chatting with a few people about it, and I see it pop up, and I joined the voice chat. There was about, I think there's a little over a dozen people in there. And as soon as I join the voice chat, I get ready to tap the mute mic button. And as I tap it, the screen flashes. I go back to the Discord screen that I have where my DMs are, and Veritas exists no longer for me, right?
Yeah.
So some ding dong on Veritas has provided Darth Dawkins, that colossal numpty, server powers. So it's not enough for Darth to kick people from his channel, which, given that Veritas isn't his server, that's really all the power that he should have. He can block and mute people and kick them out of his Atheist Helpline channel. No, that's never enough for him. He wants the server mod so that he can ban you from the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I don't know how long he's had this power on Veritas, but in the past, he had that power on Reformation, the Reformation server, which still exists. And he hollowed.
Though, isn't it?
No,
Wasn't that?
Nope. I don't know that I don't know that he's ever had his own. He's always gone into somebody else's and then whined and begged and wheedled his way into getting all the authority that he can get so that he can just ban people from the entire server, which is not something that anyone else, I think, that if somebody else got their own voice chat channel on there, like say it was me, I'm not going to ask them, hey, I want to be able to ban other people from your entire server. That's none of my business. The only thing I need authority over, the only thing I need some mod control over, is the channel that they've graciously provided for me. That's it. Darth insists on getting the server mod powers, and then he hollows out the server. That's what he did on Reformation. I know, because One Way, whom everyone loves, well, no one likes One Way here, but they love his wife. One Way famously got drunk one night and was talking to me from the wreckage of what was left of Reformation after Darth got frustrated with somebody there and left that to go back to Politics and Religion as a Discord server. He had server mods, I believe, on Reformation, and he banned so many damn people that nobody was going there anymore because nobody could have any conversations. That was my understanding of how it worked. At the time that I was hearing this from One Way was quite drunk when he was telling me all this, I didn't realize exactly how that worked in Discord, in sort of the rules of Discord. But that's basically what he did. He showed up, he got all the power that he could get. Instead of just kicking people out of his Atheist Helpline channel or whatever they called it on Reformation, he was banning people from the server, and the only way they could get back is by doing mod mails. And if they did a mod mail and another mod let them back in, Darth would ban them again and then yell at the mod. So it was nothing but trouble. And after a while, he got frustrated with that, just kept kicking and banning people, and then he left. And then nobody was going to Reformation for a very long time. It was a graveyard. He turned the fucking thing into a cemetery. And he'll probably do that with Veritas and any other place that he goes to if people keep giving him any kind of authority. The interesting thing is that he's been griping about how he's been treated on the Politics server, which is run by a guy named Doobie, who Doobie apparently is slow rolling him, right? Is not really granting him server mods. And there's a good reason for that, because Darth can't be trusted with that. He's like a chimp with a gun. You don't want that monkey running around there because he'll just start shooting everything. Just start pulling the trigger just to do it. He's a danger to himself and others, folks. This is pissing Darth Dawkins off because he wants that server power, and he was complaining that the last place that he was, which was Politics and Religion, he had that kind of authority, and he didn't get all this kind of dodging and delays on that. Which is interesting. Keep that in mind. He was on Politics and Religion. He left that in a huff because despite the fact that he could ban anyone he wanted from Politics and Religion, he wanted to permanently ban Tom Rabbit. And from what I understand, the way the politics worked, it was decided that was too much. He had gotten Tom Rabbit's voice channel removed because Tom Rabbit got one from the mods at Politics and Religion. Darth couldn't handle that, and he yelled and berated everyone there until they took it down. Fair enough. Tom Rabbit has his own Discord server. Well, after doing that still wasn't enough. He wanted Tom Rabbit at persona non grata. He wanted him removed, permanently banned from there. And I think the answer was no. And so Darth left in a huff. Now Darth's talking about where he was before. They were perfectly reasonable, and he had nothing but respect for them, and he had all the power in the world. Yeah, and he left because they didn't give him enough. It's not enough for the guy. He's a child. So anyone who spends any time in the dungeons of Discord, which I try not to spend too much time on there, if you run across the guy,
it's about that place sometimes.
He's the creature from the pit, like in Spartacus. He's just Only unlike, the main character who, turns out to be kind of a badass after his ordeal there. Darth's more like, I don't know, like the mop boy or something in the pit. So, let me see. Jackson. Darth had almost total control in politics and religion except for 2 rooms, and that still wasn't enough for him. Yep. That's kind of what...
Yeah, If you want that kind of, just make your own. Just make your own.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't know how. I don't think he has the patience or the knowledge, or maybe he has enough self-awareness to know that if he tries to do something that technical on his own, he'll smash one of his precious Apple products.
You mean he doesn't have? You mean one of his goons can't make one for him?
No, like even those mods and stuff. He had that junkyard dog, the attack dog one, and it would like auto mute people. He just load people up. He wasn't programming that stuff. He had people programming those mods for him. He was asking for that, and they provided that shit to him. It's like, why are you fueling this guy? Like, give him a voice channel. Give him mods for that. If he doesn't want to talk to somebody, he can mute him and he can kick him out of the channel. They can go to another channel on the server and then talk shit about him. Darth can't tolerate that. He was pissed off because he was going into another channel, and while he was in there, he couldn't server ban somebody. He couldn't mute them. He's in other people's channels. So he's raising a fit. Like, he can't understand, like, and he can't believe that he has to live in a world where people don't recognize the greatness of Darth Dawkins to give him total control in a server that's not his own, even though he has a track record for completely abusing his power and authority and fucking up servers.
Yeah. Sounds like he has a middleman issue, but he still only likes to deal with middlemen. At least when it comes to him and the people that he talks to. On what platform, what server, what stream, whatever.
Yeah, it's gotten so bad that, I mean, he muted me super fast when I got into that. He also has me blocked on Clubhouse. So when I heard him talking to that teenager, the only way I could hear that was because somebody shared the link. And when I clicked on that, it went through Discord, through the Discord preview player, and I could hear it there. But when I clicked on the link to join, to listen in on the club, on that room through the Clubhouse app, it just showed up as if it was no longer available.
Wow.
And Darth Dawkins was in there. Jay Robin was in there. I think Redefined Living was in there later. But it was a guy named Punishing Atheism's room. And if I followed any of them, they didn't pop up. Wow. I think they all have me blocked. I didn't realize I was that terrifying, because sometimes my arguments ain't that good. But apparently, they're worried or something.
Their feelings, Jeff. It's all about their feelings. All that feelings noise.
John says he doesn't want his own Discord because no one but his minions would frequent it. I don't know. Probably. I think he understands that without the other mods, he would hollow it out. Maybe he realizes that. He would just delete everyone, and then no one would be able to come in. And the ultimate appeal, like somebody would mod bail him, and then he would have to manage it. With this way, if he's just like, if he goes into somebody else's, he can act like he's a celebrity. Like, look at all I bring to this server, and then when they don't give, he just wants it as easy as possible. Like, give me all the authority, let me abuse the shit out of your channel. Don't ask me to be responsible or be constructive at all. Because when I talk, people listen, and I bring, I'm the core of this whole, and people do like that because people will show up. But if it weren't for other mods allowing other people to stay, or bringing people back, he wouldn't have anybody to talk to. But that doesn't occur to him either. Those are the exact same mods he's abusing later on. Why'd you let this freak back in here? Why'd you let this creep back in here? If they didn't, the server would die, and you'd have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he was running his own server, I mean, John Robertson's right. If he was running his own server, he would just basically ban people until the server went into oblivion.
Yeah,
and then he'd be. I think that's why he did that on Clubhouse. Like, and that was one of the first times I'd heard about him being in Clubhouse talking to anybody. He was in somebody else's room. I think he started that worldview and conflict or whatever. I don't think he's ever on it. But then again, I'm blocked, so I don't know.
I'll just give you my login for Clubhouse.
Hey, yeah, that could work.
That way I can get blocked.
Is that on your bucket list? Ooh, I can't wait to get blocked. All right.
I was waiting for it.
All right, folks. I'm gonna. So anyway, yeah, that's my there goes my rant there about Darth Dawkins and his Discord.
That's a long rant.
That was it was kind of a but it's interesting news. I didn't realize he'd been on a well, it's probably not recent, but like yeah, at some point, yeah, he and it looks like Jay Robbins even banned me too, which is sad, I guess, but it's all right. I didn't think he was going to talk to me again anyway. I wonder if he'll talk to ask yourself again, or maybe Tom Rabbit. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Locusts don't grow the crops they decimate. Good point. Good point. All right, folks. And on that, yeah, we'll let AJ have the last word on that one. We will get out of here. All right. Take it easy, folks. Everybody have a good night, and I will probably be back. I don't know if I'll be doing one of these tomorrow night, but I'll probably be doing one Saturday morning. So I might be covering Jay Robbins' return to Skeptic Generation if I can stomach it. So take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye.